All right. Hello, YouTube. I told you guys I was doing something different. I got one good response. That's good enough for me. I'll take it. So, if I can make this thing work, I'll read a little slower because I read a little fast. I think. Oh, it's first thing in the morning. I'm having my coffee. Good stuff. Uh, oh, my goodness. Oh, let me get this straightened out. I'll try it again. All right, here we go. Chapter 3. Years before the mine was closed, it was the lifeblood of the town. Nearly every family had someone working in it, and its wealth kept local businesses thriving. But that prosperity came at a cost. Safety was often sacrificed for profit. The Calloway family owned the land, but two older brothers lived up north. College educated and far removed from small town life, they were focused on extracting as much gold as possible. This often meant pushing the miners to work longer hours and to venture into increasingly unstable tunnels. The accident occurred one summer evening during a shift that was already considered risky. A team of miners, including Calloway's son Thomas, had been sent to reinforce the tunnel deep in the mine. They knew the rock was fragile and it had been groaning under pressure for weeks, but the foreman insisted the work had to be done immediately to avoid a costly halt in operations. Danny Calloway went on shift that day, but he was nearby when it happened. The ground shook and a thunderous roar echoed from the mine's depths as the tunnel collapsed. Dust and debris spewed from the entrance, and the alarm bell rang out, summoning everyone in town to the site. Rescue efforts went on for days, but the collapse had buried the men under tons of rock. By the time the last body was recovered, the death toll stood at 18, including Thomas Calloway, which is Old Man Calloway's son. It was the deadliest accident in the mine's history for many in the town, and it marked the end of their trust in the company that owned it. It certainly destroyed the faith that Mrs. Calloway had in her husband. She couldn't stand to look at the mine every morning. A painful reminder of her greatest loss was too big a rift to overcome. She decided back home was best for her. The accident triggered an investigation, but it was more than a formality. A little more than a formality. Calloway brothers blamed unforeseen geological instability, while some inspectors noted that the company had ignored safety concerns, so no legal action was taken. The owners settled quietly with the victims' families, offering just enough money to keep them from pursuing further claims and keep themselves out of court. For the miners who did survive, the accident was a breaking point. The workforce dwindled as men refused to return to work, fearing for their lives. The company responded by cutting wages and scaling back operations, further alienating the community. Within months, the once bustling mine was operating at a fraction of its capacity. Among the men who remained was Ricky's dad. He hated the job and quietly turned to drinking, hoping to numb the life he couldn't escape. When another collapse occurred, this time without casualties, the company announced that the mine was no longer profitable. They shut it down, ending the rumors of rich veins of gold and leaving behind equipment, debris, and a town that had built its identity around the mine. Danny Calloway purchased outright what was left of the operation for pennies on the dollar. He wanted to be sure his son's memory wouldn't be laid aside for whatever might remain in the darkness. The closure of the mine was a death knell for the town. Without the steady income from mining, families began to leave in search of work elsewhere. Shops that once catered to the miners and their families closed their doors, their windows boarded up. The school, once filled with the laughter of children, became eerily quiet as enrollment plummeted. Even the church, a cornerstone of the community, fell into disrepair. Its pastor moved away, and the building became a haunting reminder of the vibrant town that had once gathered there for weddings, funeral, and Sunday service. Those who did stay behind did so out of necessity or stubborn loyalty. Among them was Mr. Daniel Calloway, who couldn't bring himself to leave the place where his son was buried. He watched as the streets emptied and the buildings crumbled, and the town spirit faded like a memory. The town, now abandoned, became a symbol of both hope and betrayal. Its closure left scars on the land, the people, and the community as a whole. But for Mr. Calloway, the mine was more than a relic of the past. He knew about the potential gold still hidden in the depths, a fortune that could rebuild the town if used wisely. Yet he also knew the dangers of greed and corruption. He had seen how the mine's wealth had once been wielded to exploit and oppress, and he was determined not to let history repeat itself. The mine became a place of reflection for Calloway, a monument to those who had died within its walls, and a reminder of the sacrifices made by the townspeople. He visited often, walking its perimeter and sitting at the entrance, as though guarding the secrets buried within. By the time Ricky entered Calloway's life, the town was a little bit more of a ghost town than its former self. The boy lived just 100 yards away, across the creek that separated the properties. Overgrown weeds crept through the cracks in the pavement, and the few remaining residents lived in quiet resignation. The abandoned mine loomed over all of it, its rusted gates and crumbling infrastructure as a testament of what had been lost. For Ricky, growing up in such a place meant learning to live with the echoes of a history he didn't fully understand. But for Calloway, the mine and the town represented a choice: let the past define their future, or find a way to reclaim what had been taken. The mine, with all its hidden gold, stood at the heart of that choice, a chance to rebuild if someone only had the courage to fight for it. It had to be someone who understood that a move made now will affect a move made later. Someone with time to learn how life can be a game. Someone with youth and a desire to do better. Chapter 3. Chapter 4. Ricky couldn't sleep that night. His mind kept returning to the mine, to the sheriff's veiled threats, and to Mr. Calloway's cryptic words about gold, kings, and pawns. He felt like a piece on the chessboard, being maneuvered in a game that he didn't fully understand. The next morning, he found himself walking towards the mine entrance, the gate still crooked and rusted, half consumed by creeping vines. Despite its decay, the place held a sense of quiet defiance, as though it dared anyone to disturb its secrets. Ricky hesitated at the entrance. His father's drunken rants about the mine had always painted it as a place of danger and death, a tomb for the desperate and the greedy. But now, after what Mr. Calloway had said, Ricky saw it differently. This wasn't just an old mine, it was a battlefield. The faint scuffle of boots on gravel startled him. Ricky turned to see Mr. Calloway approaching, a small satchel slung over one shoulder. He wore his usual overalls and ball cap, but his face carried a seriousness that Ricky hadn't seen before. I figured I'd find you here, the old man said, stopping a few feet away. You've got the look of someone trying to make sense of things. Ricky kicked at the dirt. He was unsure what to say. You think there's still gold down there? Mr. Calloway didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer to the gate, his gaze fixed on the dark entrance of the mine. I know there is, he said finally. The kind that could change everything for this town. But gold's not the only thing buried in there. What do you mean? Ricky asked, his curiosity outweighing his fear. Calloway reached down and picked up a loose stone and turned it over in his hand. Gold has a way of bringing out the worst in people, Ricky. Greed, betrayal, desperation. I've seen men tear each other apart for far less than what's in my mind. Ricky frowned. Then why not leave it alone? I mean, if it's so dangerous. Because leaving it alone doesn't solve anything, Calloway said, standing up. The town's already dead, boy. The people who stayed behind, you, the families of those miners, they deserve a second chance. But it has to be run right. No shortcuts, no scheming. Ricky's eyes shifted to the mine's entrance. That's why the sheriff's after you, isn't it? Because he wants the gold? Calloway nodded. Yeah. Wayne Heath's been sniffing around this for years, hoping to get his hands on it. He thinks it'll make him rich, maybe even powerful enough to leave this place and become a senator somewhere. He doesn't understand what he's playing with. That kind of wealth, it's a curse if you don't respect it. Ricky's chest tightened. So what are we going to do? We're going to play smart, Calloway said, his tone firm. First, you need to understand this isn't just about us. It's about everyone who's been left behind in the world. People like your dad who've been crushed under the weight of broken promises and dreams. When we do this, it's for them. I want you to have it, but only when your dad can't take it from you. Ricky swallowed hard, the enormity of what Calloway said sinking in. He felt like he was standing on the edge of something far bigger than himself, a game whose stakes he couldn't fully comprehend. But he also felt something else, a spark of determination. So what's the first move? He asked. Calloway smiled, a glimmer of pride in his eyes. We start with the truth. There's something in that mind Wayne Heath didn't want anyone to find. Something that'll show just how far he's willing to go to get what he wants. Now Ricky's heart was pounding. He didn't know what they'd find in the mine or what dangers awaited him. For the first time, he felt like he had a purpose, like a role to play in the game. Together, they stepped toward the gate, the weight of the past and the possibilities of the future pressing down on them. The mine loomed dark ahead, foreboding. Ricky wasn't afraid. He was ready to make his move. So that's chapter 4. All right, then. We'll do another video of chapter 5. Thanks for watching. Love you guys. Bye, whoever's watching. I know Miss Sheila. Thank you for watching, Miss Sheila. Thank you for telling me to do the next one. So I'll do 3 and 4, make another video, send it to you. We'll see how it goes.